left wing. Free ball. Perfect! Garland one of the lane. Lob to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs Media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including Bally Sports Ohio, without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. The Cleveland Cavaliers responded to some very tough news to start the weekend with two big wins over the Atlanta Hawks and Houston Rockets. We are going to dive into those wins, but first, I need to bring on my co-host because we got to discuss the major news for the Cleveland Cavaliers, unfortunately. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, but I was on a work trip when the terrible news came out, and it was kind of nice. You know, you could just quickly take it on the chin, get back to work, and then came back, had my daughter's 4th birthday party, so everything's in nice perspective for me. Heading back into watching game action, caught Cavs Hawks on DVR, and obviously tonight's win live. And yeah, it's certainly tough news. We can dive into it, but it is nice to see them respond well in these first two games.
Absolutely. And honestly, I feel like the Cavs have shown a lot of resilience lately. I know people got a little down after those back-to-back losses in Boston, but like I said before, those are games that we would have been underdogs in even if Garland and Mobley were healthy. And I thought the second game against Boston was the first time that kind of looked like Darius had been struggling since his play had really kind of improved lately. And turns out there was a bit of a factor at play as he had broken his jaw in that game. But I was really, really impressed to see the Cavs kind of come out, take care of business in these two games. We talked about it heading into the weekend that these were games that were set up well for the Cavs to come out and get wins, with both of these teams playing their third game in 4 nights, travel back-to-backs. It's set up for the Cavs to take care of business, but you still got to go out there and win. And I was really, really impressed with how they played in both of these games. But before we dive into those wins, I think we should go over the injuries because, otherwise it's that big elephant in the room. So Darius Garland will be undergoing surgery for his broken jaw and be reevaluated in 4 weeks. Evan Mobley had a loose bodies removed from his knees. 6 to 8 weeks is the timeline there, which will likely keep him out until February. So, Carter, obviously, we're now down probably the most impactful players for our offense and defense, respectively, in terms of how they impact the overall team scheme and the way that they the tides that raise all boats on both ends of the court. So, what are kind of your thoughts as the Cavs head into a challenging stretch?
Well, I think you have to acknowledge kind of the thought timeline you go through when you see that kind of thing, especially, back-to-back news drops of really bad news. And, the first thing you do think is lost season. Things aren't going well. Things have been really, really hard. The vibes have been up and down. And then all of a sudden you're about to hit the easier stretch of your schedule. And then you get this news. And then you do kind of look at the schedule. You look at how it's going to shake out, and you realize that you're still going to have about half a season left once they return. It's not so late into the season that it's all hope is lost, but it is going to be a big challenge. And I think it also has somewhat changed the way I'm watching every game. I'm really not looking for macro trends right now. I'm just looking for individual ways to, individual roads to wins. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think what it just means is the Cavs' depth is going to be tested. And it is going to be, I think the worst part of it is that any answers as to how this team is going to, round as to whether this team would round into Eastern Conference contender shape that we kind of hope we might see, those are going to remain unanswered, and that's really challenging because this is a season where you really need to find some answers.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a season now where you're just not going to be able to look at any of the season-long numbers and really get a sense of what this team is when you have, already a very noisy 27 game sample size. You're going to have this weird stretch and then trying to find your footing after those guys come back. So my immediate reaction was, okay, well, that's probably going to rule out a top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, the top 3 in the East have kind of separated themselves to begin with, and the Cavs' shaky start would have already put that in question. And now I think we can kind of rule that out. But one of my first thoughts as well was this is a situation where I think it's really beneficial to have a guy like Max Strus in the locker room because, last season in Miami, they had the most injured games in the league and really used those opportunities to develop guys like Max Strus, to get Caleb Martin touches, to give Gabe Vincent those on-ball reps, and a lot of stuff that ended up really paying dividends in the playoffs for them. And I think you're already starting to see that in these 2 games where someone like Isaac Okoro is now all of a sudden getting all those above the break reps, getting the ball handling opportunities that we saw a little earlier in the season, but just amplified to another extent. And it makes me wonder if you're able to utilize this time and utilize it in productive ways to develop guys and find some actions and find some sets that could pay off dividends down the road. Because I think, the Cavs are now, 3 games above 500?
Yep.
If you're able to weather the storm and stay around 500, you get Garland and Mobley back when you have 30, 40 games left of the season, you can make another kind of run during that time to get up to, 4 or 5, avoid the play in that stretch. So I think the season is very far from lost. It's frustrating. I hate it. But you have to look at these opportunities and look at these opportunities in the way that the best teams in the league do, which is, hey, this is developmental opportunities for everybody else down the roster, some of these younger guys, to see what we can build and hope that by the time it comes to the playoffs, yeah, you're not going to be in the seeding that you hope for, but you may be better prepared as a result of it.
Has this meaningfully affected the way you're watching games right now? How has it changed the viewing experience, if at all?
I would say, from a fan perspective, because obviously, I'm watching, especially my first watch through games, I'm watching it as a fan. I do feel like there's pressure off. And, this was a high pressure season that we're going into. And I still think that there's a lot of pressure on this team to perform ultimately. But, it's understandable given the situation that they're in. So to that extent, I actually kind of feel like a little bit of a relief. It's frustrating still. Like there's times where I'm like, yeah, man, like it would be nice to at least be, having Mobley when Garland's out for multiple weeks or a month or whatever, like being able to give him those playmaking reps and stuff like that. Like I feel frustration with that. But, if there was a time for this to occur, it is nice that it's now. Like I look at the next 4 weeks. So we're at game 27. We just played game 27. If Garland, he's going to be reevaluated in 4 weeks. I know that doesn't mean he's going to be back in 4 weeks, but if, let's say, 4 weeks from today, there's 10 games between now and then, and the 15th is the 11th game. So of those 11 games, we play 7 teams with a losing record. That's encouraging because you still have an all-NBA caliber player in Donovan Mitchell. You have a top 10 center in Jared Allen. You have quality starters in Max Strus. Dean Wade's been giving you good minutes. Okoro's been playing well. You have Karis LeVert, who is still working his way back, but is
Dean still on a minutes limit, by the way? It feels like he hasn't really exceeded the 25.
Yeah, I believe JB had mentioned that he's on a minute restriction, and I also saw Chris Fedor mention that Karis is still on a minute restriction, so you could kind of, glean from that they're not 100% physically, but I just feel like you have enough to kind of weather the storm over the stretch, especially when you look at the schedule. And yeah, it's frustrating to not be able to really take off and make a run at this point. But if you go through like 11 games here before you get Darius back, and you're even just 6 and 5 after winning these 2, like you're going to be 4 games over 500, and you're going to be in a good position, right? Like I think the kind of premature writing off of the Cavs this season is very premature, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I do think I have. I think for this upcoming stretch, I have kind of stopped worrying about how and started worrying about how many. Just trying to win. And like the team does still have enough juice to compete with just about anyone. I was pretty pleased with their effort against Boston. And both those losses, obviously, really bad news for Darius in the latter of the two. But yeah, I mean, I think. Ultimately, you look at this, you look up and down the Cavs roster, you look up and down other teams' rosters that they're going to be playing, and they're not going to be favored every single game, but they're going to be, all those games should be winnable. And like that's kind of all you can ask for in the end for kind of a team missing 40% of its starting lineup. So I do think it's meaningfully affected the way I'm watching the games in the sense that it's almost been a little nice in a weird way, just in terms of removing the weight of expectations, removing the weight of them needing to come to some grand clarity, and just like, well, let's just try to win a basketball game tonight, fellas. Like that kind of feels like the vibe. At least that's the way I'm watching it. And I think they really met the moment. And it's been different guys stepping up the last couple games, and that's what I want to see. I just want to see a team that's healthy enough culturally to kind of take that hit on the chin and not just be completely KO'd. If they get run off the floor in either of these two games, I think the way we're talking about this team feels a little bit different. And I know it's never a good idea to play the result, but when you're down 40% of your starting lineup, it's okay to play the result.
Yeah, absolutely, and I believe they covered in both of these games as well. So let's take that as a win.
Let me tell you, there is no better road to the Cavs improving their net rating than for a game to go to overtime.
Man, we should probably mention the Cavs have now won 11 straight games in overtime, which is the second longest streak in NBA history. I think the most recent one was 2016. Like, it's been a while, and that's a tough feat to begin with, but especially in today's modern NBA, where just you start overtime, and if a team hits a couple threes, like that could basically be a wrap. I think it is a testament to their resilience. And man, like I just think their resilience overall, like things did not feel good after that Portland loss and the Detroit game. Like that Detroit game was a bad win. And I thought it was a real gut check moment for the Cavs, and they responded after those games with some quality wins. They really competed in Orlando and Boston, just impossible places to win on the road. Probably would be frustrating that some of those slipped through their fingers and they ran out of gas late, but they didn't allow that, compounded with the news of losing Darius and Evan, to really be a weight on them. And I think the credit first and foremost has to go to Donovan Mitchell, who I think has embraced the role that he needs to be in, just at a really, really high level. Like I think his mentality in that Atlanta game, even though he didn't shoot well individually, he was really making the most of trying to get other teammates involved, feeding Jared Allen, really feasting on a bad Hawks defense to begin with that was looking clearly sluggish, having played in Toronto the previous night.
Let me tell you, that was not I didn't want to tweet it because I thought it would kind of rain on people's parade. That was not the best defensive outing I've ever seen by a professional basketball team from the Atlanta Hawks.
And we saw that in the first matchup against the Hawks, right? In that in-season tournament game where the Cavs scored 128 points and were really able to get whatever they wanted. That Hawks defense down Clint Capella is another animal entirely. I saw that they almost lost to the Pistons tonight, which is a tough feat in itself, but they took care of business, and that's what you really want to see. Donovan really feeding Jared Allen making the most of the size mismatch they had against Onyeka Okongwu, I thought was really encouraging. Sam Merrill, who got the junkyard dog chain and was phenomenal against Houston, has just been so assertive and so much fun. And let's go with Sam, Carter. How much fun are you having watching that quick trigger go off and knock down absolutely everything.
Well, let me tell you this, Justin. I didn't expect to make Sam Merrill the thumbnail for our YouTube live stream at any point this season. And boy, did he make a fool out of me. He's playing unbelievable basketball. Ever since that Detroit win, that ugly Detroit win, if you'll recall, he got in. He got put in early in Miami and hit 3 threes. Then against Orlando, hit 2 threes. 3 against Atlanta on Saturday, and then another 5 tonight. Just really, really thrilled with what he's done. And I mean, I don't think it's blasphemy to say he's the best shooter on the team. By I think, like, in terms of the way he catches off movement with the speed he gets the shot off. I mean, that quick release is just unbelievable. And he is really kind of proving that, in bursts, when he gets a little bit of run, he can make an impact. I think he's done a really nice job of unclogging the Cavaliers offense. He just tends to, he and Strus, I think, just tend to open up different angles, different lanes, and kind of just get things a little unsticky in a way that is really, really valuable. And I mean, he's just really smart plays. I mean, yes, he hit the threes that you were asking him to hit, but he also, plays a little dribble handoff game with Isaac Okoro in the corner in overtime, and attacks Şengün all the way to the basket for a layup. A tough angle layup, by the way. Just I think defensively he actually did a really nice job in this game. He went chest to chest with Jalen Green on more than one possession. He took a couple charges. He was in the right spots. He got 4 boards in his 24 minutes. I mean, just a really all-around game for a shooting specialist, but obviously the shooting is what made it special.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's now up to 45% for the season from 3. He's just automatic, and we saw a fair amount of this in summer league. And the question always has been, if Sam was 6'6", I think there would be a more consistent role for him. But at 6'4", he kind of falls into the glut of guards that the Cavs have, where, Donovan Mitchell is obviously going to play a lot of minutes at the guard position. Karis LeVert is kind of naturally a shooting guard. Isaac Okoro does a really good job at that position. Craig Porter Jr. Obviously is a guard, and it becomes hard, especially against a team like Houston that has a lot of length, to play like 3 or 4 guard lineups out there and really give up that much size, especially when you don't have an Evan Mobley to go to. Dean Wade working his way back from injury. It's tough to have the appropriate length with those guys. And it's one of my big questions, because obviously with the injuries that the Cavs have, it's going to open up opportunities for guys like Sam Merrill, like Craig Porter Jr., like Isaac Okoro. But because they're all still fighting for kind of the same position and the same minutes, it's going to be interesting to see how JB goes about deploying them, because there were times, in the second half where I would have liked to see them go back to Craig Porter Jr. I thought Houston hunted him a fair bit on the defensive end. It was the first time I've really seen him be attacked in that way. But you still want him to kind of get that run out there. You still want him to be able to work through that. And I thought offensively, he was giving the Cavs a little bit of something. And especially looking at Donovan playing the entire second half of these last 2 games, I do think you're going to need to lean on him as a ball handler a little more than you did in these games, because as much as this is a manageable stretch, I don't think you can really treat these games as like must win and like shortening the rotation and overtaxing Donovan, because you want him to be fresh for when you want to make that run once the full squad is back together.
Yeah, I think I'd be really, really surprised if we don't see CPJ play some healthy minutes against Utah. Utah does not have the bruising wings that you really, really worry about.
That's a good point. They're very guard heavy.
Yeah, and unless you're a big Simone Fontecchio fan. which, I'm not sure I'm super familiar with his game. And I think
He's
that's
going to hit 5 threes on us. I just
I know.
it.
He's going to Sundiana gains us. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think it is kind of an interesting spot, and then it's also an interesting challenge where JB has not shortened his rotation in the aftermath of these injuries. He's expanded it. They've run 10 the last 2 games, and I think that is really smart. I think the instinct is to shorten it, but when you have to play more guys in roles you're not used to them playing in, you kind of just want to. It's almost like a grab bag. You just want to see who's going to earn the minutes, especially with 2 of your remaining top 7 in your rotation seemingly on minutes restrictions still. What I am interested to see is how much slack JB is willing to give these core rotation members who are working their way back in lieu of guys like Merrill and Porter. Because, let's say Karras isn't on a minutes restriction, you kind of would expect him to be out there in overtime instead of a guy like Sam Merrill. And maybe the Cavs don't win, if Merrill isn't there making all those winning plays that he makes. So, that's going to be a really interesting thing to track is, how assured of a shot is a guy like Merrill or Porter going to get? And also, how assured are the remaining planned rotation players of their 28 to 32 minutes, given that it's not Darius, it's not Evan. In a normal lineup, Isaac Okoro might play only 15 to 20 minutes. In a normal lineup, George Niang might only play 15 to 20 minutes. But now that they're shorter, are they just going to automatically slide up the chain, or are you going to always give this run to a Merrill and Porter and see if they're feeling it on this given night? And Merrill ended up playing 24. I got to imagine it's near a career high, maybe, or in the top 90 percentile for minutes in a game for him.
Yeah, it's interesting because you would think that you wouldn't have a minutes crunch when you're shorthanded like this, but really, I think it's such a great point that you brought up here, because when you have your full lineup, the hierarchy is very established. You know who's going to be on the court. You know which minutes are up for grabs. But then when all of a sudden minutes do become available and there's a wide array of guys that can compete for those minutes, you have to manage the personalities. You have to, keep everybody engaged. You do have guys that have an extensive track record, right? Like Karis LeVert was probably 6th man of the year front runner early in the year, and he's working his way back. So you do want to give him that leash, right? And when you have a guy like Dean Wade that's come in and played so damn well in this starting role, you got to give him a lot of credit for coming back, from missing time, playing as well as he has. And when he's playing this well, he's playing that stretch 4 game, that 3-4 role that George Niang plays, but giving you really good individual defense and can eat into those George Niang minutes, especially if you're going to be playing more guards. So I think some of it's going to be based on matchups, but it is going to be interesting to see where you go track record versus who's been playing better, right? And in a perfect world, that's going to be one and the same, but there's going to be back and forth, especially when, major roles in the team's offense are missing, and you're going to be asking guys to do other things, and inevitably you're going to have stretches where things just aren't clicking because guys are put in unfamiliar and uncomfortable positions.
Yeah, by the way, how about our guy Dean? 28 points over the last 2 days. Just shooting the cover off the ball. I think he's 6 of 10 in his last 2 games from 3. Rebounding, defending really, really well. He had a 3, I think it was over Aaron Holiday or maybe Fred VanVleet. It was one of their small guards where, he was getting closed out on, but he had just clearly pre-decided on the swing that he was going to shoot. And it looked really, really pure. He went from just at the end of last season, every single 3, the launch angle was just awful. And the shoulder was clearly so affecting his ability to shoot the way he wanted to shoot, to what he's been doing this season. And I know he still is going to be a guy who kind of gives you up and down shooting. Like, I'm not saying that he's like a sharpshooter, but when he's in rhythm, man, it feels really, really good.
It does feel really good. And I think he took and made another one of those kind of contested threes with Dylan Brooks on him too. And that type of decisiveness, I think, is really needed, especially when, you're doing playmaking by committee and a lot of guys are filling in other roles. Like, you need those kickouts to result in field goal attempts. You can't have record scratches. The playmaking and the movement overall, like, it's going to be a little bit limited without Mobley as a hub and Garland with his playmaking. You need these guys to be decisive, because I think you're going to need to win the 3-point battle a lot of these nights, because you're going to be playing shorter lineups than a lot of these teams. You're going to need to have that variance from attempting threes, and the Cavs have done that. They've taken 93s in the last 2 games here, but you're going to need that decisiveness, and you're going to need guys like Dean Wade to step up, fill in for Evan Mobley, and give the Cavs the kind of support that we get from Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. Carter, speaking of guys that have stepped up and really provided great support, if you're talking about who you are most interested to see in this, 12 to 20 to 30 games that we're going to have without Darius and Evan Mobley, top of my list is Isaac Okoro.
For one, can't believe it.
Yeah, it's really out of character for me, but stay with me here. I'm going to explain why I've really kind of course corrected and come around on Isaac. No, but like, he was one of the best stories of the season early on. The way that he was providing hustle plays, the way he was initiating above the break, and the knee injury kind of derailed that. I felt like he lost a lot of momentum, and you saw it in bursts and flashes. But now that he's out there, getting consistent minutes, getting consistent touches, I've just been really, really impressed with how he's been playing. And, the fact that Houston put a big man on him, put Şengün on him often, and Isaac's out there creating in the short roll. He's giving the ball up on dribble handoffs and setting a screen quickly, screening for Donovan late in games, both against Atlanta and Houston. Like, that's the type of stuff that we really wanted to see. That's the value add with his defense, because the defense is always going to be at a really, really high level. And 4-6 from 3 is nice these 2 games. I would have liked to see him get a couple more up, but when he's doing all this kind of stuff, the 3-point shots, the number of attempts in that isn't the main focal point of the conversation, because it's just so obvious where he's adding value. Whereas when he's just standing in the corner, it basically becomes like a zero-sum game. It's, did he make threes or did he miss threes, right? Because otherwise, he's not really contributing a lot on the court.
Yeah, I thought he was awesome tonight. I thought he, as much as Sam Merrill, was the reason they won this game in overtime. When you put a guy like Şengün on him, who is among the slowest footed defenders in the league at the center position, if you're not able to yield an advantage there, then you're probably not going to win the game, because otherwise they're just parking one bigger guy on Jared Allen, a strong perimeter defender on Donovan, and then and then Şengün's at the rim. You're playing 2-on-3, and that's just not going to work. So the Cavs very smartly, and Isaac very smartly engaged and kind of messed that kind of stash strategy up in a lot of different ways. Possession 1, it's a swing to Isaac in the corner. He just hits the gas, goes right past Şengün, gets an easy bucket. Then he ends up dribbling to the corner into a DHO for Sam Merrill, and then is able to make an easy pass to, I believe it was Strus for a layup.
Yeah.
Like
the lob to Allen a little earlier.
Yeah, it was the Allen lob. I'm sorry, that's exactly what I was referencing.
LeBron, you are not.
No, I know. So like ultimately, I just thought like they attacked that in a lot of different ways. There were a couple plays where where he kind of drifted out into space and forced them to switch it back because Şengün was trying to play free safety, but Isaac drifted to the other side of the floor and made it so that wasn't going to work. And then they were able to engage Şengün for a pick and roll. Like, I just thought that level of engagement was really, really strong. Obviously, the defense was great as always. It doesn't really show because Van Vliet was on one tonight, but on offense, I thought the playmaking was really strong. I thought the understanding of court geometry was really strong, and I think he's a big reason why they were able to score the points they did in overtime.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it was nice to see the Cavs go after Şengün as much as they did. Obviously, him picking up that first foul early. Isaac did a great job taking it to him and drawing that second foul, getting him in foul trouble. I think, that helped the Cavs get out to the lead that they did, because so much of Houston's offense does run through Şengün. And I think, him missing time probably contributed to Fred VanVleet having as many assists as he did. But they continued going at him, whether it's Tristan, Dean, Isaac. They kept putting him in action and not just doing kind of, I think sometimes they're like, oh, okay, this guy struggles in space. This guy isn't the most stout defender. Let's isolate on him. The Cavs had a lot of movement before they attacked Şengün, and I thought that was key to those attacks being as effective as they were. I want to go back to, evaluating this opportunity with the guards. And obviously, Craig Porter Jr. is going to get minutes over this stretch. He's one of the only point guards active. Hopefully, knock on wood, maybe Ty Jerome comes back before Darius. We haven't heard an update on that. I want to keep my fingers crossed that, he comes back at some point. But if Craig's getting minutes, I struggle with figuring out exactly how I would prefer to see him deployed. Because on the one hand, it would be nice to be able to buy Donovan some time off ball where Craig's creating for him. Those minutes have been very effective. Among the most effective minutes for Craig Porter Jr. is when he's playing alongside Donovan Mitchell. And, freeing him up a little bit. But on the other hand, you're going to need to spell Mitchell at some point. You're going to need to have someone else playing backup point guard, and Craig Porter Jr. seems like clearly that guy. Do you have a preference in terms of how you would be deploying him?
Yeah, I do, and I think it's actually the latter for now. I like, if Darius, Garland were healthy and we wanted to find minutes for CBJ, I think I'd go the other way. But I do like the idea of him kind of just getting Donovan that blow, handing Craig the keys to the offense. That's one little danger of the CPJ Donnie pairing, is if Donnie decides to initiate, CPJ is not a shooter right now, or not a super willing one. Though he did hit a step back three, which was very nice tonight.
That is nice to see.
And then
defenses aren't reacting that way, right? Like, he doesn't have that off ball gravity.
Yeah, I really want to see CBJ played with the shooters. Every minute he plays with Merrill feels really good to me. It just feels like the offense has a plan, knows what it's doing on those possessions. And I think he is the kind of player that right now is just going to look best when he can be on the ball. And those lineups kind of, if he's playing with a Merrill and a Strus at the same time, I just feel like, it's a buffet of options for him. And he also has the room to turn that corner and get to the rim. So I tend to prefer him in the shootiest lineups possible, because I just think it hides. And like, the one player I just don't think he can play with right now is Okoro. That's actually the only player I'm looking to avoid, is because the 3-point, you just start losing the math problem really fast. Kind of no matter who your surrounding personnel are at that point.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, I'd be happy just to see him get more run. I know that the Rockets with their big, strong bodies kind of were going at him, but I still thought they held up okay. They were +4 in his 9 minutes. Yep. The 3 was nice. The 3 assists were nice. I just think this offense is going to get gunky without Darius in, and anytime you can play a point guard, I'm going to be happy to see it, though. Obviously, I get why someone like Merrill gets all those minutes in the second half. With the game in question. I just don't think I just wouldn't play Donnie entire second halves. I don't think the team needs to do that. And he was fresh tonight, which was pretty amazing given how long that stretch that stint was. I just don't think I would do it. I think it's pushing too hard for a guy that pushes his body pretty hard when he's on the floor in the first place.
Yeah, he gives 100% every time he's out there. So, the tricky thing is, I do think, like, when I'm looking at what the ideal kind of lineups are to play Craig in, it's a lot of starters. Like, I think I would like to have Dean Wade and Jared Allen out there because not that he needs the backline help. Like, I think, Houston going after him defensively, I think it was rookie mistakes. I think the defensive potential of Craig Porter Jr. is immense. Like, I think we saw that. The play that he made to, save a diving ball and tip it to Tristan and create, second chance opportunities. Like, he's such an impactful player and he does so many things out there. Like, I remain a massive fan of him, but I think you want to have Jared Allen out there as a pick and roll partner, and you want to have that spacing around, right? So maybe you're playing him with Karras a little bit to provide some secondary ball handling and make things easier. Again, you run into that thing where if Karras is being the primary initiator, Craig's not really providing a ton of gravity, but I think you can do guard-to-guard screening even in those situations, which the Cavs have been doing more of with Mobley out of the lineup. So maybe that's one of those ways that you can kind of rectify that. But I definitely expect him to get more run. I think, a matchup like Utah, as you mentioned, makes a lot of sense with the
especially coming off 45 minutes for Donovan. I really hope he gets a chance.
Right. So, that'll be a really, really interesting matchup. Our guy Colin Sexton has been playing great lately, getting a lot of minutes with the starters. So big shout out to Colin. Looks like he's going to hand Brooklyn a loss, I should say they are going to hand Brooklyn a loss tonight.
No, just Colin.
Yeah, just Colin, which, more help in the standings, which is great. I think if the Lakers win tonight against New York, the Cavs will actually be up to 5th in the Eastern Conference. So
which is such high comedy, given how we felt at different points this year.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one benefit to what the Cavs have gone through, with these injuries is the East has been so flat outside of, those top couple teams. And if you can weather the storm and even, play above 500 and lean on Donovan Mitchell and find some other things before Darius comes back, I think that immediately lightens the load and you can kind of weather the storm a little bit further prior to Evan Mobley getting back. So it's going to be really interesting. I guess the other guy we should talk about who was active tonight but didn't see any time is Emoni Bates. And he doesn't fall into that guard's minute crunch. And this has been something I've been thinking about kind of individually where, the Cavs very clearly have a developmental plan for Emoni Bates. He's been getting great minutes in the G League. Recent games have still been great. I'm still enjoying watching the highlights and stuff like that. There isn't as much of a shortage in terms of guys that bring what he brings to the table, but I am curious if this is an opportunity where you'd like to see him get a little bit of run just because they are shorthanded and he's a guy that can eat some minutes. It's tricky because they keep going back and forth. I'm like, okay, you do have Max Strus, you have Isaac Okoro, you have Karis LeVert, you have George Niang, you have Dean Wade. Like, there isn't really a shortage in that way, but at the same time, when you're shorthanded and there's a little less pressure on the games, maybe this is a spot where you'd like to see him get some spot minutes. How do you feel about that?
No, I don't think so. I think the team clearly has a pretty prescribed strategy with Emoni, which is like, we're not gonna push it. I think this is a team that decided that they'd rather wait a month or two too long to start giving him run than give him run a month or two too early. Yeah. And maybe, shortcut some of that development they've been working on in the G League. I just don't, if Merrill was playing poorly in the stints he was getting, like there were some times earlier in the year where I don't think Merrill was making the most of the short minutes he was getting. And I was like, okay, well then, you might as well play the 6'9" guy, the 6'9" kid who is, shooting the cover off the ball in the G League and did all preseason. But like, if Merrill's going to play like this, I just don't really see the minutes because, like,
dude, he got fouled on a 3-point attempt. Like, he's running around so much and hitting 5 of 10 threes. Like, all of a sudden, like, the defense is scrambling and like assaulting him, trying to stop that laser quick release.
Yeah, so like I think Merrill's play almost is more exclusionary than anything, because like they're not going to take minutes away from Karras. They're not going to take minutes away from Max. They're not going to take minutes away from Isaac. Certainly not right now. And you know, I certainly do not think Amani Bates should be playing minutes at the 4 right now. 6'9" is not equal for everyone, and if you're worried about the Cavs getting beat up on the boards and with physicality, as is, Amani at the 4 will not make you feel better about that. So
from a skill standpoint, he's kind of like a 2-3, even though he is massive.
Yes. So like I just don't think I would play him right now. You know, I'm happy to reevaluate that over the course of the year. But even I think you're kind of looking for something like real foul trouble. You know, there were some stretches where they were playing Dean at the 3 or Niang at the 3 because of different foul trouble, or having to go small because Jarrett's been in foul trouble. Like maybe some of those spots, but like it's such a limited window that I just think like most of the time he's not even going to be up with the main roster. So I don't think so. Can I pivot to a topic that's near and dear to my heart?
Yes.
Haka is a bad strategy.
Go off. I'm going to clear out. Go for it.
The Cavaliers scored 42 points in the third quarter because Ime Udoka got his team in the bonus, intentionally fouling the Cavs' backup center Tristan Thompson. TT went 2 of 8 from free throws, but like my most annoying thing to do is when people just measure that. Like, how about the 2 points Dean Wade gets on an offensive rebound where he gets shoved and gets to waltz to the free throw line because you were burning up all 5 of your free fouls. Just you know, wantonly fouling Tristan Thompson. It's a really.
I think in that stretch he went 2 of 4 from the free throw line too.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I think his 2 0 of 2 stints were in the first half.
My only gripe is that the Cavs took him out. Like, let him. Like, I feel like I'm Brad Pitt in Moneyball right now. Only time I've ever felt like Brad Pitt. If the enemy's making mistakes, let him. Stupid strategy. Especially, it is only a good strategy to me if you were already in the bonus. But like, just letting Donovan Mitchell go to the free throw line every time you bump him, like because you wanted to mess with Tristan Thompson, not a good strategy. And I'm glad that the basketball gods rewarded the Cavs with one of the best quarters of the season on offense for it.
Yeah, I think I'm completely on board with you. You're right. People don't tend to weigh the effect that it has on the rest of the game. And I do want, while we're on the subject of fouls, I want to talk about Jared Allen because I don't think we've spent enough time on the podcast talking about him, because obviously this is a major opportunity for him to step up. I thought he was phenomenal against Atlanta with 25 points, 14 rebounds. Tonight was a difficult night for him. I actually kind of liked the way he was playing in the first half. The finishing just wasn't necessarily there, which was a little weird to see. But he picked up some weird fouls. I didn't think a lot of them in the middle should have been attributed to him. And then with 4, he just made a questionable decision to pick up that 5th, where it just, you weren't going to get to that ball. You have to kind of be better in that situation. And it was kind of a frustrating moment to see him pick up that one, because he really has to kind of recognize what situation the Cavs are in. I was impressed, though, that when he came back in after picking up that 5th foul, I thought he was very impactful to close out the 4th quarter. Obviously, defended that Şengün last-second shot.
Boy, did that one look good.
That one, man, like that still had a chance. But he did a very good job on Şengün not fouling down the stretch. Had that big block late in the game. Getting the rebounds. I thought he made nice decisions as a playmaker throughout the night as well. So obviously Jared Allen is a really important part for the Cavs. We've seen him play tremendous in some really big matchups against Jokic, against Embiid, against Anthony Davis. We need the consistency though. That's the biggest thing. Obviously, he was great against Porzingis as well, but he's got to recognize kind of what the situation is and just be a little more careful when it comes to when he's throwing his body at guys, because they just can't afford to be playing heavy Tristan Thompson minutes. As much as I like what Tristan's doing, you really don't want to wear down. Like you don't want to go to that well more than you have to.
Yeah, I just think it's like kind of an impossible task in front of him. So I'm a little more sympathetic because with Evan out, he's kind of between a rock and a hard place here. Like, I don't think the Cavs' point of attack defense has been as good this season as it was last season. And so there's a lot of like, do I challenge this? And it's maybe not a great challenge, but like I'm the only thing that's like creating resistance.
I have noticed that he has been let down quite a few times at the point of attack where he's just kind of put in these impossible situations. And frankly, it's a little reminiscent of, some of the blow-bys we saw in the Knicks series.
Yeah. So like, I think there's a little bit of that of like, well, I can either go help and maybe I'm going to risk a foul. Maybe I'm going to, risk, maybe I jump, maybe I'm going to have to jump to get to this because I'm not in great position to help because they beat my guy faster than I thought they were going to, or beat their guy faster than I thought they were going to, and now I'm putting it in risk. But like, I think people would be just as critical if the Cavs were just hemorrhaging points because he wasn't going over and challenging. So like, I don't know. I don't think he's playing as badly as people seem to think he is. I think there is a degree of like I just think the magnifying glass on him just gets so much bigger defensively when Evan's not around, because he not only doesn't have those minutes with Evan where they're just constantly passing off threats and taking turns rotating to the rim. He also just doesn't have the ability on nights where he does get in some foul trouble for the Cavs defense and offense to be okay. So yeah. I'm sympathetic to that. That's point one. Point two. And I'm gonna be a little critical of some Cavaliers fans for not liking Allen's demeanor on some of these high foul games. Like oh, he's smiling, he seems flippant. It's like, have you never made a mistake and angrily smiled? Who are you people? Like
I was gonna say he looks frustrated.
Yeah, he looks frustrated to me. It's like an exasperated vibe, Like I don't know. I hate. Body language doctors are already a dangerous game to play. Bad body language doctoring, I cannot abide. So, ultimately, like I just feel like it's not been as easy as you want for him this season. For a lot of reasons. Starts out, gets hurt, which stinks. And like it just hasn't been quite right for him in some of these games. But like, the upside you still obviously see. That Hawks game was amazing. And even though I did defend the fouls, he's just, the bar is higher when Evan's not out there. But, that's what he's paid to clear. So, like, I don't want to completely hand wave, like, accountability to make smart plays, not pick up dumb fouls. I just wanted to at least contextualize that. I do think it's a little bit harder to avoid them in the current context he's in.
Yeah, and frankly, like, I think the only real bad games that he's had, prior to tonight, if you want to call tonight a bad game, is the Orlando ones, right? And that's where he gets in foul trouble. And, it's really tough. Like, once you start getting into foul trouble, that as a big man really gets into your mind, especially when you're playing a team like Houston where, you got guys like Fred VanVleet that are going to hit the floor every single time you're even around them. You don't want to pick up an offensive foul because Şengün or Fred VanVleet are flopping to the floor. So you're kind of taking it to the basket a little more gentle. You're not going directly at guys, right? Like, it's all that kind of stuff that it's just a cascading effect that it has on your game, and it's abnormal really for him to get into foul trouble. But you just see in these games that once it's occurred, it impacts so many other facets of the game, and that makes things tough. And when you have a guy that steps on your foot for and you weren't doing really anything wrong, like, it's frustrating to get called for a foul in that situation. And Thank God that the second time Şengün fell into Allen for no reason that wasn't called as a foul on Allen. But man, like, it is a tough position that he's been in. But I do think overall he's been very good this year. We've had matchups where he's just been essential to the Cavs winning, and he's going to need to be essential to the Cavs winning over this stretch. And really, this time that we're missing Garland and Mobley, I feel like we're probably going to come away from this having an increased appreciation of Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen and the guys that we do have, and an increased appreciation for how much easier on both ends of the court Darius and Mobley make things, right? Like, I love to see that this team's showing fight, that they're stepping up in these ways. I'm curious to see what the long-term effects are of this time is, because earlier in the year, I thought Donovan was playing almost like a little frustrated when Darius was out. Like, God, I got to do this again. This, to me, these last two games feel more like early last season, where Donovan really kind of embraced being that point guard in that time, really was getting guys involved, understood the value of keeping everybody involved. And it just translated beautifully to how well he played with Darius, where he was still taking his own shot, but he was playing within the flow of the offense. I wonder if we're going to see that same effect where, Darius has his time off, take care of nagging injuries and whatnot. Donovan finds more of a groove and finds that chemistry with guys throughout the lineup. And then when it all comes together, it starts to gel the way that we saw last season.
That sounds great. I order that. That is the order I'm going to make at the restaurant. Do that, guys.
See, I've already found the optimistic read on this. This is how I deal with trauma. And I was dealt too much trauma on Friday in a 40-minute window, and I have found the silver lining. God bless the Cavs. 2 wins. We will be back podcasting after Thursday's game. Cavs have a home back-to-back with Utah and the Pelicans. Pelicans is going to be a really, really tough game. So if they find a way to steal that one, we will be absolutely jacked up on Thursday, but I'm sure we'll have a ton to talk about. Big thanks to everyone that tuned in live on YouTube. I forgot how late it was. Just got excited about this win. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.